Welcome to our YouTube channel. We're so glad that you found us. Please enjoy this inspiring interview with Dr. Christiane Michelberger. She was interviewed by Yvonne Unger. If you would like some more information about Dr. Michelberger, please visit her website at findingawakening.com. For more information on our non-dual community and the free resources we provide, we invite you to visit our website at awakening-together.org. We hope you enjoy the satsang and hope to see you live in the sanctuary.
Welcome. I'm so happy to be here in the sanctuary with Christiane Michelberger. She said yes to come here, which is kind of a surprise because she never thought doing a satsang ever, and now here she is. And maybe there's something to say about satsangs in the sanctuary. We do this as a way of wisdom sharing, sharing from experience, sharing from insights, and I know that Christiane has a lot to share. So I'm really happy you're here, Christiane.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yay. And before we start, some of you might know Christiane, some won't. So I'm going to read a bit of her bio so you get a bit of an idea who she is and what's her path been so far. She's a doctor, actually. Dr. Christiane Michelberger is a retired physician and psychoanalyst. In 1975, she embarked on the spiritual path after having been confronted with death. She studied Zen with the Zen Master Prof. Nagaya, Roshi, and Willigis Jäger. She was then issued a teaching permit from Willigis Jäger in 2002. She turned to the teaching of the historical Buddha, which are laid out in the Pali Kanon. Having been diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015, her search became urgent. She found Kevin Schanilec, who had made the path to awakening accessible again. On the final leg of her journey, she used the path through the Ten Fetters, a concept that is laid out in the Pali Kanon. And 2 years later, what she hadn't thought possible had happened. The self was fully gone, the truth was seen, all suffering has ended. And if you want to learn more about her, there is a link. You find it on our website in Awakening Together, and it's findingawakening.com. And for now, I'm just happy to have you and to share more about your path and about anything you want to share with us. And I just want to say that I met you a year ago and I stumbled across your website. And the thing that stood out for me was how perfectly simple and clear you described the fetter model. And the thing that was standing out for me is that you just described it from the other way around. So you started with the 10th fetter, and then you described how the things came into place, how a self was created. And so I'd love you to share this with us again, because it's so simple and beautiful.
Sure. So let me first talk a bit about what a fetter is. I heard you already shared or discussed some of these models. A fetter is fundamentally a lens which is in front of your eyes and distorts the vision. It's called fetters because it fetters your ability to see clearly. So, and with the 10 fetters, you don't only have one lens in front of your eyes, but you're like at the optometrist, where he adds this lens and this lens and this lens in this model glasses. And imagine he adds 10 lenses, which are all not fitted to you. You will hardly be able to walk. And that is what happens with the fettering process. We are simply not seeing what is, but what we want to be. Astrid Lindgren lets Pippi Langstrumpf say in her book, "I create the world like I like it to be." And this is exactly what we do. We imagine a world that is not there, but that we like a bit better. So why does this happen? The 10th fetter is the last that gets resolved when all the fetters are seen through, but it is the first fetter that was created. It's called ignorance. Now, each name of each fetter is the name for the illusion, for the distortion that we put on. So what happens? We are born, and the little baby, everybody who's ever seen a baby knows it needs to be comfortable all the time, otherwise it will just cry. And it needs to be comforted, otherwise it won't stop crying. The world seems very random, unreliable. The mother, even the best mother, can't always be there on the spot. And so within us, the hope develops that there is something else which we don't know yet that could make us happy all the time. This is our fundamental delusion. We want to be happy all the time. And you can just watch it every day. Just whatever you do, find out whether it's intended to make you more happy or not. Now, being always happy is a condition that's impossible. So, it won't happen. Now, we imagine more things that need to be in place to be always happy. If we want to be always happy, everything needs to be stable and substantial and reliably there, permanent. Otherwise, if it dissolves immediately, there is no way to always be happy. In the next step, the restlessness, a huge search for these three impossible starts. We want to find something that's substantial, that we know will be there always. So we know what will come, and we can rely on something, which is also an aspect of hoping something would be permanent. But permanence, substantiality, and satisfactoriness are the three impossibles in life. Well, this restlessness is incredible. You can't imagine it. It's like in a storm. When the fetters are resolved, I will talk about it a bit later, you can feel the storm, like this restless search for something. I walked around for hours just to get rid of this restlessness, and it wouldn't budge a bit. It's such an intense search. But it will be fruitless. And so, because we can't find anything, we simply invent it. We imagine a sense of self, the sense of I exist. That is the first bud of the self. I am, I exist. Now there is hope, but this is very subtle and nearly intangible. So now this budding sense of me gets equipped with some faculties, something it has or does. The next thing is we add the assumption that we have a faculty of perception, and with that we and the world fall apart. We experience a world that's outside of ourselves, within time and space, seemingly substantial and permanent, independent of us. We think it was there before we came, and it will be there when we're gone. It will just always be there in some form. At that stage, the perception is formless. The boundaries are not yet created, and that is the next step. We assume that there is a subject, this is a little more substantial me, that relates to everything we see around us. The tree, also the thoughts, feelings, what we hear, anything that can be discerned. And with assuming a subject that experiences objects outside of us, everything starts to have borders. It's quite amazing. Also, the sense of having a body appears. Before that, there was no sense of a defined body. So now we have a world outside of ourselves, which we relate to, and we are there with a body which we seem to inhabit. Since we relate to everything, it also relates to how we feel. So when something makes us feel uncomfortable, we push it away. We don't want it. If it feels comfortable, we'd rather pull it closer and have it stay. And this permanent pushing and pulling is the sense of desire and aversion. We think we have something, desire and aversion, that cause these reactions to anything that happens, depending on how it makes us feel. There is this famous saying, there are only two things that make us suffer. Either we want things to stay the same or we want them to change. These are the only things that make us suffer. And desire and aversion stand for that. Now, even if we try our best to get what we want and to not get what we'd rather not want, unfortunately, it doesn't work out. Everybody knows that. We fall ill. People are not the way we expect them to be. Things are just not always our way. And so we start to pray to gods, different gods, whatever we think is a god, hoping that he will help us. We create rituals that are made to induce something that pleases us. It's not about connecting to God, as you might think, but we want something we want from him, right? That's it. Now, of course, this doesn't work out either. So then doubt creeps in. Are we really praying to the right gods? Should we pray to somebody else? And in the end, since there is no solution to this dilemma, we create a self that is the full agent of anything. You can say we created a god of ourselves. We say, I am thinking, I am experiencing, I am acting, I am in control of my life. Maybe even I control my feelings, I can control my thoughts. I'm holding the reins here. But as you will have learned, this doesn't work either. It's a nice idea and we firmly believe it, but the facts are not really supporting it. So we can't really control how we feel and only think nice thoughts. And what we decide to do won't always work out. So that's it. And some people then, because of the suffering, turn back and say, okay, I need the final solution to this. And these are the people who go on a spiritual path of whatever color. And then if people are on the Theta path, the sequence of how the fetters are dissolved is from 1 to 10. Now, interestingly, I'm talking again and again to people who have awakened on their own. And most interestingly, they have experienced the same milestones without knowing at all what was happening. Sometimes they were very much in despair because they thought, my God, am I going mad or what? So the first thing is we simply look like we would look for our purse if we misplaced it, whether there is a self. Is there really a self? And the foundation for this is anything that for which there is a sensory experience. This is something that is surely there. And the question is, do we have a sensory experience of the self? It seems very simple. It's like, this is a ballpoint pen. It's long. This one is black grayish with silver. And it writes, what sensory experience is called me, I? That's the simple question. Not so simple to answer. When I was totally in despair with my breast cancer, I was just pure panicking and nothing helped me, neither my psychological knowledge nor my Buddhist knowledge, nothing. I was in full-blown panic over days. My blood pressure was 180 and I didn't get out of it. And there's a saying from the Buddha that says, if you can't control it, it can't be you or yours. There is no me, this isn't mine, this isn't myself. It's something we recite as Buddhists. But hey, I hadn't got it for sure. My thoughts are racing, I might die. Oh, my body, what is it doing? It's betraying me, producing cancer cells. It was like, oh, will I survive? And still in the hospital, I'd searched for 40 years really intensely. It was like I turned my back on this exotic identity as a spiritual seeker because now I needed to find. And there is a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And really, this happened. And it happened to me again and again on this path. I found a website where people had been guided through the self-illusion, how they call it, and they had a book out with dialogues, I think 20 dialogues. The gateless gate crashes. The gateless gate is a Zen analogy. In Zen, they say, you have to cross the gateless gate. I thought, I wonder whether this is something. I had done some pretty crazy stuff in between with an Indian guru and all kinds of stuff to find awakening. And I read the dialogues and I thought, whoa, something is happening here. The dialogue went on quite normally. The guide asked questions and then the client answered. And at some point, the client said, I've seen that, and then I didn't understand anything. It was just like a Zen poem, beautiful, but not comprehensible. Comprehensible. I couldn't comprehend it. And so I thought, yeah, something is happening there. And I went on the first website of Willigis Jäger, who founded the forum then and also had published this book together with the co-founder. And I thought, I don't want anybody messing with me and telling me things maybe I need to believe. I do not like that. You can't brainwash your way to enlightenment. It's just not possible. And so I thought, I'll just try it myself. Also, the radiation treatment was planned, and I didn't know whether I could answer every day, which you had to do if you engaged there. All right, so I took this book and asked myself all the questions, and later we will try out some of them. But I couldn't find a me, and nowhere. it felt like the sense of me was retreating further and further. And I was at a point where I thought, this is so weird. It's like a computer virus. It attaches itself to every file. Seeing turns into I see. Hearing turns into I hear. Doing turns into I do. Strange thing. The next day, it was a Sunday, I was sitting on the couch. I did this in a very relaxed way, just the feet up, and I was thoroughly enjoying the questions. And the next question I read was, so is there a you in any physical form or shape? And I thought, what a silly question, of course not. And while I was thinking that, it was as if I was hitting a wall at 100 miles an hour. And I had the sense of being moved to the side. I'm not sure about that, but I had a clear sense of it. And it suddenly became so obvious that there was no me. It was right in front of my nose that I asked myself, how could I not see this for 40 years? It was so absolutely obvious. And then I thought of all my group members in our Pali Kanon circle who desperately wanted stream entry, how this is called in the older form of the Buddhism, which the historical Buddha taught. And they just had given up hope, and I had too. And I thought, this is so simple. This is so simple. I want to learn how to help people with this. And so then I applied to the forum and got confirmed that I had seen through the self-illusion. This is the precondition, of course, that you can guide. You have to have seen it for yourself. And then I started guiding. That's how my guiding career started. Now, I had this breast cancer and I had such difficulties with the doctors. Since I'm a physician myself, and my psychotherapy was partially specialized on cancer patients. This was the majority of my clients. I was retired by then, but I'd worked until a year before that. And I thought, this reactivity to these doctors can't go on like that. I can't survive that. I'm in aftercare for a long time. You know, I had a special kind of cancer and I had studied all studies regarding this, and it suggested that taking anti-hormonal treatment wouldn't really make a difference, but it could induce cancer itself. And I thought, that's a bad choice. And so I refused to take it. And later I talked to a professor at the university who offered it, and I asked him whether that was the last study and the last result, and he said yes. And I said, so why should I take it? And he said, yeah, that's a question you can ask yourself. So I was right on with this. Anyway, reactivity was terrible. There was a night where I just couldn't stop crying because I was so desperate. And I thought, this has to stop. No, I knew about the fetters from my Buddhist training, but I knew nobody who could help me with that. To my knowledge, there wasn't anybody in this world. All right. And then, again, my teacher crosses my path. That was Kevin. He had a discussion with Ciaran Healy. Ciaran Healy had created the first method of inquiring into the self-illusion. And he worked with a very simple question. He was a philosopher. He asked, there is no self. Is it true? And that was the only question he went with in all his people who studied with him. And he and Kevin had a discussion. Ciaran said, I think I have developed a method that leads further. And he described it in detail. It was basically about sharing your feelings when you respond with feelings to somebody. And Kevin responded and said, yes, I think this could weaken desire and or will, but I'm not sure it would totally dissolve it. And I thought, this person knows more than I do. At that point, he was part of an order, and I knew an order member. And so I contacted my acquaintance and said, hey, could you talk to him and ask him whether he would guide me? And my acquaintance just turned it down and said, yeah, I can ask him, but I can tell you the answer. He's only guiding within the order, and he has so much to do, he can't do more. We have already a waiting list. And I thought, yeah, okay. I saw through the self-illusion myself. Maybe I can do this as well. And so I asked whether he could ask Kevin whether he would write a DIY instruction for it. And Kevin did. I found that so kind. And with a few people, we started to work on this. And it was all very new, and we didn't really know what to do and what to look for. But over time, it became very obvious. So reactions have different stages, and like that something happens, we feel a certain way. It's always a feeling that is on the weak side, never on the strong side. We feel maybe powerless, hopeless, hurt, something like that. And then a reaction happens to make us feel better. This is what reactions are for. And we may accuse the other person or leave the room or whatever. And within this reactivity points, there is a section between the first impact and the reaction, and that is what we call gap. It's not a physical space. It's a dynamic tension space where we feel awful and the need to resolve it. And in this gap, we look for whether desire and aversion exist. It's basically always the same. We always look whether what we think is there exists. When the fetter fell for me, it falls at least in 2 steps. At least we weaken it and then we break it, but often we need more steps. And when the fetter fell, I inquired into an addiction. This is very fruitful, addiction inquiry. For me, it was chocolate, the drug of choice. I wrote to Kevin and said, hey, can we do something about, I haven't introduced Kevin yet. So I was in this group with these other people inquiring. Kevin and his acquaintance helped a bit. And then at one point, Kevin sent me a friend request and a message asking whether I would like him to guide me through 4-5. Yes. And he said, okay, under one condition, you need to guide others then. And I said, sure, I'm already doing that. And this is how it all started. And the first round I did on my own, and the second round with Kevin, and it was about this chocolate thing. And he asked, so what could keep you from getting up from your desk and reaching for some sweets? And I knew it immediately. It was, I needed to be held, really held firmly, really firmly, without the person saying a word. It was very clear. This relates to a post-war childhood. I'm a post-war child in Germany, and my parents had just fled the Russian-occupied part when my mother was already 6 months pregnant. And they had to give me to a nursery with 2 weeks because I would have frozen to death. They lived in a bombed basement, in the basement of a bombed house. So they saved my life physically, but of course it was very hard psychologically. And my parents tried to create a new life within all these torn down houses. And this not being held was really a deep, deep wound. I hadn't really realized its depth. But when I inquired, we use usually a sentence for that. I inquired with the sentence, there isn't anybody. There isn't anybody. And it created so much fear. And I thought, whoa, this is the fear I experienced as a baby. And there was no way to manage it or control it. So I let it run. And this was the primary aspect. And trying to get out of it is usually for me doing something or eating chocolate. And so this exit was now closed. Eating chocolate was no longer in discussion. It only took 5 days, but in retrospect, I thought the inquiry took me 2 months. I was so surprised when I read my dialogue with Kevin. You'll find big parts of my dialogue with him in my book, Finding Awakening. And one day, I just had enough of this fear. I thought I couldn't take it any longer. I couldn't sleep. It was basically always there. And I thought, this has to end. And one time on a Sunday morning, I said, I'm going to sit down now and not stop until this thing is gone. So I sat there waiting for what made me react to appear. And all of a sudden, everything was gone. The inquiry was gone, the gap was gone. I felt like having woken up out of a dream, a nightmare, really. And I didn't know what had happened. So I wrote to Kevin, I said, the gap has closed. And he asked, has it closed or disappeared? And I said, disappeared. And that was the shift in this fetter. This is always the case. It's really, the gap just disappears, it's gone. It's very clearly noticeable. So there I was, and now my reactivity was gone, and I can tell you, this is such a weird feeling. The next morning, I went on a steeplechase with all the worst triggers I had had in the last months. I accused Kevin of arranging that. So the first, I was still in radiology, was a call from my radiology department saying that the physician I usually talk to can't see me this week because they are either sick or on holidays, and I will see Dr. So-and-so. Now, I had already had a meltdown in that office when that happened before. And so the receptionist was so kind. Oh my God, she just, oh, I'm so sorry. And she apologized. And I stood there waiting for the meltdown to come, and it didn't. It felt like turning the key in the ignition and the motor doesn't even idle. I was like, what? And in the end, I managed to say, it's okay. I was so speechless. And on my way back, it was like, I thought the next days, I have not even known what contentment really is. Being truly content, not wanting something and not wanting something. This is such a different experience. That was really amazing. But this deep contentment is indescribable. I just tried to find words for it. It's really indescribable. And I noticed how the yearning for the sweet stuff was gone. For example, when I ride trains and I change trains on the way, I usually go into a coffee shop and get a latte and a little cookie. And this time I also went into a coffee shop, but I only got a latte. I didn't even think of the cookie. And I was on the train with my latte and thought, oh, look, you haven't got a cookie. That's amazing. So that was quite mind-blowing. After that, the thoughts become rather quiet. We stop thinking our way through the world. It's really so much quieter. The sixth fetter is very subtle, and unfortunately I cannot say much about it because it fell away without me even knowing that it fell away. I just noticed that my borders were gone. I walked through the streets and I either had the sense of being in an astronautical outfit with totally encapsulated and shielded from the world, or it felt like my borders were fraying. It was very strange. And I thought, what's going on here? And then I wrote back to Kevin. I had wanted to make a break because I was really exhausted from this inquiry. And he said, yeah, well, that's the sixth fetter. And then we tried some inquiry into it. Basically, we look for the subject that is related to the object. But I didn't have that any longer. It shows up in when we look at something. You can play with that, and we can do that later. Our attention jumps back to ourselves and back to the item, and back to ourselves and back to the item. It's a constant feedback loop. I'm in a relationship with that. It's so interesting. I caught that one just. That was really amazing. And then the next day, the middle of my body was gone. I thought, what? Okay. Yeah, you have to be prepared for some very weird changes in the middle. And in the middle of the inquiry this time. And a day later, I didn't feel any of my body any longer. I just didn't have any representation for it. And suddenly I realized something very important. I had been very difficult with my eating. I had either dieted or binged, depending on the season, but it was never normal. And it was not normal because my body image had always stayed the same, no matter how much or how little I weighed. I always felt wrong. And so I thought, wow, I simply was a victim to an imagination that didn't change with the numbers on the scale. It was quite a revelation for me. After that, it even reinforced the not being so chocolate addicted, because it was like the soul relationship to the body was no longer so strong, which has some difficulties, like it's hard to feel when I'm sick. And more than one time somebody told me, you need to see a doctor. And I said, why? And they said, well, you're really sick. They were always right. So the other good side is pain is so much less, because the whole story around the pain is no longer there. It's like with a child. In the moment it hurts, but then it's gone. It really just hurts a moment, except for burns. I experienced the burn recently, then I could study that very well. But otherwise, pain is so much shorter and much less than before. That's a treat, really. When the subject-object relationship is gone, everything in perception starts to change. It's the region where the Zen folks say, in the beginning of the inquiry, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers. In the middle of the inquiry, mountains are no longer mountains and rivers are no longer rivers. And at the end of the inquiry, mountains are again mountains and rivers are rivers. The first thing that is noticeable is that the three-dimensional perception is lost. That means everything seems flat to me. I can't gauge distances well, which resulted in quite a few dents in my car. and me bumping into things more often. I still do that. This doesn't come back, but some people deal better with it than I do because I'm autistic, so there is something coming together. I'd also never had really good depth perception, though I saw 3D. Then, after this step, the fundamental, phenomenal faculty we think we have is questioned: perception. We think we perceive the world outside of ourselves within time and space. Now we look for the faculty of perception. And that fetter really broke my heart when I realized that I'm not perceiving an outside world. Yes, there are experiences, but imagining it outside of myself is really an imagination. It really broke my heart. I had such a heart pain that I considered going to the hospital. But since the restlessness had already started and I was walking for 1.5 hours a day, I thought, no, I don't think I have a heart attack. I wouldn't be able to walk so much. So that was very weird. When the faculty of perception is gone, I didn't inquire much into it. Kevin simply asked me, so wherein is the faculty of perception? And I looked for it and I couldn't find it. And I said, it doesn't have the property of location. And he said, so if it doesn't have the property of location, could it be it's an illusion just like the self? And then the penny dropped. After that, you land in a limbo. It feels like a no man's land. There is nothing really there. It's not nihilism. That's something gone wrong and can be addressed. But it's like nothing is really there. Neither the world nor you. The body is no longer there. But still there is this the subtle sense of I am becomes more tangible. For me, it was like a taste. This was actually conscious. I always had it since childhood. I felt me was like a certain taste where I could withdraw into to be sheltered from the world. That was very important for me. So now we looked for the self. And you try to find out what represents the sense of I am, I exist. And after a while, people find different things like a wisp of cloud or a smell. Some people say a smell. That's very interesting. Or just some fuzzy thing, and then you try to find the borders of the self. And over time, it becomes clear, well, there actually isn't none. It happened for me this way. I was actually not really inquiring into it at that point. I was lying in bed with quite a severe bronchitis, taking antibiotics, an occasion where somebody had sent me to the doctor as well. And I had a nap, just a nap. And while I was falling asleep, I all of a sudden felt the sense of me completely dissolving. And my first instinct was to stop it somehow. But I couldn't, of course. And so I let it run. It was actually quite beautiful. It was like laying down everything. This comes from my post-war past. I had the image of being on the losing side of a war and just laying down everything, your weapons, your belongings. You can't keep anything. And then I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was like, what is this? Now, I didn't have a sense of a body. And I felt like an ET looking at a body, trying to enter it or something like that. And I thought, oh, And I also had forgotten the personality traits I have. It was not present. And so I was there facing a body I had to move somehow, and I didn't know how. How could you do that? Now, I had worked in anesthesiology for some time, and I thought, let's try that. Open your eyes, wiggle your toes. Oh, that works. Great. And so very slowly I tried all movements, and they still worked. But it still felt very foreign, and not far later, I totally freaked out about it. I ranted in a group of other people who were working on this that yes, I get it. There is no me, there isn't mine, there isn't myself, but does it have to be so radical? Really nothing? And I was fighting it, and I felt caught in I called it the Alcatraz of now. I couldn't move backwards with my thoughts. I couldn't move forward with my thoughts. I was caught, and it seemed so tiny. It was terrible. And I just couldn't stop. I felt totally desperate. Then somebody recommended to me the book by Bernadette. What is her last name?
Roberts. Bernadette Roberts?
Yes. And she wrote about her experience of losing the sense of self, which was quite parallel, and she was as a weird space as I was. And so I read that book, and it comforted me so much, because I felt, okay, she's gone through this, I can do this too. And later, Kevin entered the chat, because somebody had told him, hey, there is somebody in this group saying that they have no sense at all. Do you know them by chance? And he came, and since he knew me so well, he just said, hey, could it be that this is already the restlessness setting in and is looking for the me that needs to be protected? And it was like a storm calming. Everything settled down within seconds and was gone. And I was totally calm. I said, yeah, that's it. That's it. This played out later in a very interesting way. Now I realized there had never been a me. So I had never had a refuge, which I had thought I had. That was terrible. And one evening, with some other people, we were watching football world championship. And I was sitting there, and the muscles of my torso started to contract as if they wanted to build a shield so that nobody can harm me. I found it so touching. It kept going for hours, even when I went to bed. After 2 football games with, how do you call it when they have to prolong it because it's even? So it really went for a long time. And yeah, I went to bed and to sleep. And the next morning, when I woke up and had my porridge, I suddenly realized that it had all been an imagination. And strangely, I felt completely safe with that. I had not lost nothing. This shift was quite dramatic and is usually quite impressive for everybody in a different way, according to what happened to them in their life before. Then the restlessness is just unbeatable. First, my mind was all the time thinking up problems, trying to solve them. It was stunning. My mind can be very busy and can invent a lot of problems, and then trying to find the solution for them and what could happen in the future, and trying to always solve it already before it even has happened. And it didn't stop. It just didn't stop. And at other times, Kevin, so this restlessness is looking for permanence, substantiality and restlessness. And I was looking into substantiality at some point. On a train, I was just sitting there thinking, so substantiality, what is this? And trying to look into it for quite a while. And all of a sudden, two little girls stormed through the train and laughed loud. And I woke up out of my thinking dream. And I thought, yeah, you better stop the inquiry. You're just thinking your way. This doesn't help. We really have to look and experience. Otherwise, we can think all kinds of stuff together. So I just looked out of the window at the sheep and the grass everywhere. It was very flat. You could see very wide. And then all of a sudden, a thought appeared. I don't recall what I thought of. But at that moment, I noticed that I had held the thought to be substantial. It was very clear. And it made me realize that, no, there is really no substantiality, not only not in things, also not in thoughts. And after that, my world turned into a ghost world. Everything looked like ghost. I was picked up. I hugged my friend hugged me, and I felt like hugging a ghost. And then we went to the Baltic coast, and the water had this shh from the waves. And to me, it had like an echo behind it, and that made it really ghostly as well. I never, ever again heard that sound. It was so strange. So this lasted for a week, and I was kind of scared to leave my bed. I was stuck to the computer because the screen was still something familiar. And one morning I thought, this has to stop. So I texted a friend who has gone through some quite traumatic awakening experience spontaneously and thought he can help me. If anybody can help me, he can. And he wasn't up yet because of time zone difference. So I thought, yeah, maybe you can solve this yourself. All right. So the first go-to is always, okay, what are you experiencing? What is your experience? And it happened that I needed to go to the bathroom. It was quite early morning, and use the toilet brush. And I realized that the toilet bowl is resistant to the touch. It was firm. And this fear of dropping through the floor fell away. It was like I couldn't even walk on the floor. It was like, oh, it was so scary. And then I made some breakfast and cut some bread. And yes, the knife went through the bread, but not through the board underneath. So yes. And over time, I slowly regained the sense of that the experience hadn't changed at all. It was all mind-made, the whole ghost story. And the last thing I really clung to was satisfactoriness. It was like being a 3-year-old in the post office wanting ice cream. And it's just not there. But nevertheless, the child will throw a tantrum because it wants ice cream. And so I inquired for quite a while into my embarrassing addiction of feeling good. I felt it to be very embarrassing. And one day I was standing in the YouTube station in Hamburg and looked around. It wasn't a very nice one. And I just looked around and said, okay, now, is this satisfactory or is this not satisfactory? This was the question I was using. And all of a sudden the penny dropped and I said, this doesn't even apply. This is neither satisfactory nor non-satisfactory. These are all just imaginations. It's not applicable to this experience, just as permanence and impermanence. They both are not applicable. And so the penny had dropped, and the experience was quite amazing because it became very, very clear that I hadn't arrived anywhere. I was just where I had always been, you know, the famous saying. No matter what I had thought, it had always been the same, all the time. And I felt like this proverbial fish swimming the seven waters and the seven seas in search of water. This was what I had been. It had been there all the time, but I just couldn't see it because of all the lenses that obscured the vision. Yes, with that, the ignorance had fallen, and something very interesting happened afterwards. I got a second cancer, the one that the drug could have caused as well, uterine cancer, and I had surgery. It was discovered super early because I was still in aftercare, and it was totally gone after the surgery. I needed no treatment after that. And when I left the hospital, I felt I hadn't suffered a scratch. Though they had found a lump in my lung of unknown dignity, and I needed a check 3 months later again. But I felt like I hadn't suffered a scratch. That's so amazing. I cannot describe it. You know, our fear of death or dying is gone because I'm already dead. There is nothing left of me except the body, which I don't feel, only when it's painful. So this is such a freedom. I cannot find words for that. It's total peace, being at peace with whatever is. I might have an opinion on it, but it doesn't disturb my peace. Now, this also has two sides. It applies for the discomfort as well as for the nice things. Last year I was traveling South England, and it was on the Isle of Wight. I was driving the sea road, the South Sea Road, and the sun came out one of the few moments during that time, and the white cliffs, they sparkled in the light like with supernatural light. It was amazing to watch, but it didn't change my feelings, how I felt. I just felt the very same. So it's really a rather a state with smaller undulations. It's no longer this roller coaster of feeling very good and very bad, wanting to feel very good again, but it's rather a very quiet state. And spoiler, I haven't gained anything. I've lost everything. That's the secret. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal story and give us some insights about the feathers.
Mm-hmm.
We do have half an hour left. Would you like to receive questions from the community, or would you like to show your little exploration with your hand first? Questions first?
Yes. Yes, I can give you one experiment so that you just get a taste of what it's like to inquire. It's very, very simple. I'm right now focusing on mentoring guides, new guides. And one just wrote to me this morning, he said, I feel embarrassed to ask such simple questions. And I told him, well, it is a very simple inquiry. You don't have to ask complicated questions. So put your hand up in front of you and turn the palm down and up and down, and let it turn on its own. Now watch like a hawk. What is turning the hand? Don't think what you learned in biology. Just watch in your own experience. What does turning the hand?
And you're welcome to write the answer in the chat or even raise your electronic hand and let us know what you found, if you found
Yes,
something.
please. I don't know. It's a very good answer, Rhoda. It's a very good answer.
Yeah, Joseph, Joe, go ahead.
Not me. Yeah,
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you, Christiane. I want to say that, well, I'm turning the hand, but attention was focused elsewhere when the hand was turning still. The aspect that I would call I or B, which still seems to be here, was not focused on turning the hand.
Yeah, right.
So again, I don't know is
Right.
that was kind of the way to get to I don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
the damn hand was turning on its own, doctor. That's all. So
It
yeah,
was turning
thank
on
you.
its own, that's right.
Yeah, the interesting experiment. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Would you like another experiment?
Yay.
Good. All right. Close your eyes and feel the breath coming in and going out. Just to calm down a bit. And then notice the thoughts arising and passing. Where do the thoughts come from and where do they go to? This exercise has a few more questions. Where do thoughts come from and where do they go to? Can you know which thought will be next? And if you don't like it, stop it from arising? Is there a thinker that's thinking the thoughts? All right, let us know your answers.
Yeah,
already
Jan,
answered.
you raised your hand. Please go
Mhm.
ahead.
Well, one thing I did notice is that as a thought would come up, and yes, no, I could not see where it was coming from nor where it went, other than that it came and went. But I did notice that there was something going on where I was deciding whether that thought is something that I should hang on to or not. What was there something in that thought that I needed to pay attention to? There was a grasping about it.
Great. Now I would ask, what is grasping the thought? You can only inquire into that while it's happening. Otherwise, it's just thinking over it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be the next step. There's the sense of me deciding whether to hang on to it or not. Great, great. Somebody wrote, thoughts Shauna. Thoughts seem to arise and float by, right? I have no idea what thoughts will arise next. Yeah, right, that's true. No thinker, but a claiming of the thinker happens. Yes, exactly. There is no thinker can actually be found, but we have to think there is a thinker. Great. All right, let me know your other questions. I will probably have, you found laughter, Rhoda. Hey, great. Yeah. I think that's an adequate response.
Definitely, yeah. I had laughter too. I'm not even sure if I had thoughts, but I had laughter. Like the first reaction when you would ask the inquiry was like laughing. That's the only thing that remained here.
Yeah.
And joy. Like there was a very playful energy with it. Like no, usually we tend to take thoughts so seriously, but it wasn't serious at all. It was like, hey, it's just nothing here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shauna.
Thank you. Thank you, Christiane. I just love your experience in such detail of the fetters. It was just fabulous. I'm studying under Kevin's fetters.
Schanilec.
Yeah, thank you. I'm studying his fetters too. We're working on the first fetter. And
Great.
Thank you. Yes. And I just love the watching the hand and just noticing that there's so much habit of something, someone doing that. But the more often I observe that, like a hawk, like you asked us to do, it becomes really clear that there's just a movement, a habitual movement of mind. That
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm curious about your example or your experience of the ghosting. That's really a trip. So everything felt like it didn't have any substantialness to it. It was just thought made up. Is that what it felt like?
I didn't feel it like that. I felt really like a ghost in a ghost world.
Wow.
It was strange. It didn't feel like made up of thoughts, just like I'm a ghost in a ghost world, and everything sounds different and feels different. And oh my, what am I going to do?
Yes.
You know, in the moment, I always think it's going to stay.
Yes. And think, right? That's a thought.
Yeah, right. Of course, it's a thought. Yeah.
And then the integration just happened.
Yes. With me going back to my actual experience and looking, okay, the floor is still firm. I can still walk. I can cut the bread and the board won't be cut and things like that. That's how I regained my normal functioning again. It's always good in any case to simply return to our experience as it is.
Yes, that's perfect. I love that. And also the senses, right? Can you go into one sense, just the heard, just the seen?
Yes, we can go. Let's go into the heard because that's really nice. So close your eyes and listen to the sounds that are present. It could be the fan of your computer or road sounds, birds, whatever. Where are the sounds? Are they inside of you, outside of you? Neither? You might notice thoughts that comment on the sounds. Just let them run. We don't change experience, we just notice it. Is there a hearer? What hears the sound? All right, what did you find?
Just like a portal. This is Shauna again. Just a portal to what's beyond all the labels. Mind was trying very hard to orient towards the labels and putting in its ideas of what the sound was. It's simply the direct experience of the heard.
Mm-hmm. You can try that with your favorite music. It's such a beautiful experience. Just really listening to the sounds. If you're a musician, don't interpret it. Don't say this was played well or this is a sonata ABA or something. Just really only listen to the sounds. Being
There's
with
another
direct
comment in the
experience
chat
is
from
very
Rhoda.
relaxing. Huh?
There's a comment in the chat from Rhoda. She said, sound feels like it's everywhere, but nowhere all at once.
Right, right. It doesn't have the sense of location, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yes, Kiki, right. No inside, no outside. I only appear as thought. Right. When we do the inquiry, we would then ask, can the thought I do something? What can it do? For example, can it think other thoughts? That would be the next step with this reply.
So Tina raised her hand, and Rhoda, is yours still referred to the exploration? Okay, so we go by order, which is Tina.
I don't have her on my screen yet.
Hi. My screen is dark. Something might be going with my computer. But anyway, I heard and I hear regularly is a ringing now when I go quiet, and it doesn't drive me crazy, but it's a high-pitched sound. I don't even have any thoughts, probably because that thing irritates me, right? I'm like, it's this high-pitched. I'm glad you said that. I was like, who hears this? Like, what and it's coming from inside. It's definitely not outside. It's a high pitched, soft. I wouldn't call it quite a ring, but it's like a like, but higher.
Yeah, could it be a tinnitus?
Yeah, I have no idea what that thing is, but I know that it comes from, I guess what I heard was it came from inside, right?
Yeah, tinnitus is in the ear.
And my first thought was, I hear it. Like that's what my first thought was, well, I
Yeah,
hear this
sure.
sound, right? So I'm like,
Yeah, and then you explore that. Where is the I that hears that?
I guess the essence that is Tina. I don't want, yeah.
We need something tangible, a sensory experience that is I. Otherwise, it's a concept.
There is no tangible I.
Okay.
Well, I mean, there is no tangible, to me, I guess, I'm like, there is no tangible I,
You're right. You're right.
So, but then who hears the sound if there is no tangible I? I don't know, I guess. Maybe it's just sounding is happening, but then who knows what's happening? I don't know. There's no tangible I.
That's right.
Okay. And I'm going to go to the doctor. Now that you said that, I didn't even think to go to the doctor. I should probably go to the doctor.
No, you don't. If you don't have hearing loss, tinnitus is just there.
Okay.
I once had a hearing loss for other reasons and also had a tinnitus. And I tell you, it gets only worse when you engage with it too much. The best is to simply ignore it. That's what we learned there. Simply ignore it. Yeah.
Okay, Rhoda is next.
It was so lovely to hear your story, and something in your story hit something in here. Like I could feel, wait, I don't think I've seen that before. And I can feel there is a furious trying to grab back at it because I don't know what it was. But when you were speaking about my words, not yours, addiction to sweets, addiction to chocolate, you said something about, I don't know what you said. I kept feeling this, like you said something about not having it, about it disappearing, but there was maybe it was a boundary. It almost felt like there was an instruction in there. And I don't know that you can answer this question, but I wonder if you might describe it one more time for me.
Since you talk of boundaries, this is the next step after seeing through desire and aversion.
Okay.
Maybe that flowed a bit together. So the next step is to see that actually there is not something in here that is relating to something out there, and with that, all the boundaries disappear. Things are still seen separately. Things don't blur, but they don't have definite boundaries in experience.
So the wanting for something to be different than it is
Yes.
which is even I want, I want a sweet, or I want a drink, or I want to smoke,
right.
whatever
Right.
that is. That's just seen through, or just dissolve for you.
That is seen through that way. Basically, what we do is, I had a very peculiar imagination. I imagined the trigger, so what sparks the reaction, to be a fish jumping, and I waited for this fish to jump. My father was a fisherman, so I think that inspired it. And I waited and waited and waited, and it didn't jump, and all of a sudden everything was gone. And this nightmare was gone too.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to listening to this again. Thank you very much.
By the way, if you want to inquire into the self-illusion, I just published a book, How to See Through the Self-Illusion. This is a DIY manual. It's a pure instruction manual. It doesn't have my stories in it, just really all the instructions for it.
How to See Through the Self-Illusion, it's called?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have 9 minutes left and 2 people who raised their hands. Let's see if we can do that. So it's
Thank you
Melanie next.
for writing all the fetters down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Christiane, for sharing your experiences. While listening, a question became clearer, or maybe you have something to share about when there is space to retreat from involvement in doing or speaking, or doing and speaking, then there's just the experience of presence, and it feels very neutral, calm, open. There's nothing to change. And then somehow the moment something gets involved in speaking, just like now, or doing something, there is the seeing that this is a concept, it is something like an envisioning something, or taking part in something like a film.
Mm-hmm.
And I can clearly see that there's nothing to do. I cannot do the switch. There's nothing that can do the switching. It just happens. And also to see through the illusion, there's nobody that can do that. It just happens. Just like when you shared, you had inquiries, but the insights just happened, or the lenses that fell away just happened to fall away. So there is nobody doing anything. And at the same time, and there is some confusion still about it. I cannot even,
You're touching on a very important point. In the end, we are not answering the question whether there is a self or any other self aspect. The answer is revealed to us. It's suddenly there. We cannot answer the question. It will be shown. It will be very clear and unmistakably clear. Now, you can suspend the fetters and feel very calm. That's possible. There are actually defined meditation states and instructions in the Pali Kanon how to reach these states. And that is what helped Kevin because he could enter all these states, what helped Kevin find out what you need to look for in each step. So the calm state is beautiful too, and why not rest in it when it's there? But the answer to whether there is a self will show itself, but you have to inquire into it, because it's really quite deep. It's not deeply hidden, but our coverage of it is quite thick. We covered it up with many layers of thinking. I'm the hero. I'm in control of my life. I need to get this done. Oh, I haven't decided yet what I need to do tomorrow, and things like that.
Yeah, there is more the experience that also what you shared, that I had this several times, that when I fall asleep, I dissolve. And or when I really, like, there were two experiences where I just laid down everything, how you just shared that before, and then there was nothing left, not even somebody witnessing. And then I don't know how long that lasted, and then I just fell asleep. And the next days it became like a remembering of what was not witnessed, because there was nobody. So, and now there is sometimes this, that there is things happening, there are others, there is this interaction, but there is nobody. And the floor is there because I am there, and the others are there because I am there. It's not, and there's an interaction happening, but there's nobody doing anything.
How does it feel?
Very open, wide, and without intention, but there is still something witnessing. And there is not this reactivity anymore. Like, things happen, and and like, once I had this with my daughter, I woke up in the night, and then I heard coughing, and there was something taking care of coughing. and when it was over, something went back to sleep. So there was no, and this is not there all the time. So there is this being in the film, like when I talk, for example, it disappears.
That's all right. It looks like you already get quite a good taste of what's happening. Nice.
I don't know if it's
I can tell you. Yeah, I can tell you.
I mean, there is times where things they are just funny, and nothing really hits me anymore.
Right.
But yeah, there's also like what you said before. Maybe this is also a question that comes up regularly. Like, are there others I can help? And then I see it's still a concept that there are others someone could help. So what is the yeah, I mean, it becomes calmer, I realize just now by talking about it, that it's not this, it doesn't bring this much confusion, that it doesn't matter somehow, it doesn't matter.
Good. That sounds really good to me. You know, there are people for whom this just unravels on its own. And I want to hear how you're feeling, because some people feel scared. Like, some people say, oh my God, maybe I don't love my daughter any longer, and things like that. But it doesn't sound like that.
Yeah, there were, but they were very subtle, like fear that was very subtle. And what you just shared with chocolate, I had with cigarettes,
Okay.
that I really had to smoke. And then I felt physically bad, but it was more familiar.
Yes. And how
And
is it
today,
now?
actually, yesterday, I thought, okay, I want to stop that, like what you just said before. And then there was the thought, oh, then I have to get sick, that I don't smoke anymore. And today I'm sick. I'm sick and I cannot smoke. So it's funny.
Your wish is
Yeah.
fulfilled.
Yes. Yeah, but thank you. It already, I think it's good to, sometimes it's good to express and hear, and then something happens by itself.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we're at the top of the hour. Officially, this satsang is unfortunately already done, if there's not more questions. And I'm so glad you came here, Christiane. And Rhoda shared some links to your books.
Oh, thank
And
you.
there are links to your website. So everyone who wants to learn more about Christiane and her sharing can go to all these links.
And we
Yeah.
have a beautiful team. I'm personally not taking new clients right now because I focus on training new guides, but we have a really beautiful team. All of them are beyond the fetters already.
Yeah. So you do guidance, or your team does guidance for English and German speaking people, and
Right.
they go through all the fetters.
Mhm.
And I personally did 4 and 5 with Steffi, which is one of your team members, and I can highly recommend, especially 4 and 5, because they're very sticky, to really look for a guide if you're interested to do this work.
Yeah.
That's just my personal
I always
experience.
say 4-5 has more lives than a cat.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you. It was very lovely to speaking with you all. I really enjoyed it. Also that you shared so openly.
Perfect. Your first satsang. Hey, you
My
did it.
first satsang, yes.
Yeah, so beautiful. All right then.
Thank you for watching our satsang. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to join us live, please remember you can do so by visiting our website at awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary. Again, our website is awakening-together.org. Remember to click the bell for more notifications and subscribe.